Hey G, what's up? Listen, drill instructor Fitch welcomes new recruits to the USMC barracks. He declares that there are no blacks or whites there. Everyone is just green because that's the color of the army. Then, he stops in front of one of the soldiers and the guy's father served. The soldier named Anthony Swafford says yes. The instructor asks if he has a girlfriend. When Swafford says yes again, Fitch shouts back that another guy is making out with her right now. Then, he makes Swafford do several push-ups. Immediately, Swafford realizes that joining the Marines wasn't his best decision. Swafford receives other punishments, such as slaps on the head and having his head slammed into a blackboard for responding to the instructor with a certain attitude. After going through basic training, recruits are sent to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. There, Swafford is assigned to the 2nd Platoon, which has several troublemakers, to see if the soldier can improve the performance of that group. As a welcome, the 2nd Platoon attacks Swafford. They tie him to the bed and threaten to brand him with a hot iron. But before being struck by the hot iron, Swafford loses consciousness. When he wakes up, he discovers that there is no mark on his leg. One of the soldiers, a guy called Troy, says that it was all a clingy thing, and that if he wants a mark, he's going to have to earn it. Regretting his decision to enlist in the U.S. Army, he fakes poisoning by taking laxatives. While in the bathroom, he remembers his life. His father was always hard with him. His sister suffered from mental health issues, and his mother was extremely depressed. The only bright thing in his entire life was his girlfriend, Christina. She promised Swafford to wait for him at all costs. Suddenly, Sergeant Sykes opens the door and offers him the opportunity to join a sniper regiment. He's giving this opportunity because he was impressed when he discovered that it took 6 soldiers to take down Swafford in the prank. But Swafford isn't very interested and tries to decline the offer. The sergeant then asks if he plays an instrument and suggests that he perform at the bugle tryout that day. The next day, Sergeant Sykes is reporting that only 8 people will graduate when Swafford arrives at the sniper course, thinking it is a bugle test. Just to show that he's boss, Sykes tells him to play the cornet even without the instrument, using only his mouth to imitate the sound. Swafford complies, while the other soldiers try not to laugh. After the public humiliation, Swafford proudly declares that he wants to stay. The training begins and includes learning how to measure wind speed and distance to the target, how to camouflage, and other things. After a few days, Swafford begins to realize that he has found his calling there. One day, he witnesses the death of one of his colleagues. During one exercise, the platoon had to crawl under barbed wire while other soldiers fired live bullets over the wire to get them used to the stressful situation. One of the recruits gets so nervous that he gets up and ends up being shot several times. Swafford completes his infantry sniper training together with 7 other soldiers. So, Sergeant Sykes divides them between the role of shooter and spotter. Sykes makes Swafford the shooter, and Troy is appointed to be a spotter. Troy is not happy with this because he wanted to be a shooter himself. Sykes also teaches them how to say the sniper code, "Without my rifle, I am nothing." Sometime later, the platoon hears the news that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. After watching the news report, Troy says they are going to war. That same day, the soldiers watch a film about war and are thrilled seeing military actions on the screen. The movie session is suddenly interrupted, and the announcer says that the recruits are to report to the company area. All Marines present celebrate finally having the chance to put their skills to use. The U.S. begins sending troops to Operation Desert Shield, part of the U.S. strategy in the Gulf War. Lieutenant Colonel Kaczynski briefs the Marines and says that the Iraqis use gas to suffocate their enemies, which is considered a war crime. He shows them a photo of an Iranian child suffering from that same gas. Kaczynski also says that their mission is not killing Iraqis. They're supposed to protect oil fields in Saudi Arabia. In their camp, Swafford finds the photo of his girlfriend while unpacking. Another soldier sees the picture and shows the photo to everyone. Seconds later, Sykes appears in their tent and orders the fighters to put on chemical protective gear and run. They take too long to get dressed, and the sergeant orders them all to run into the desert as punishment. And so a new routine begins. Soldiers gather in formation 6 times a day. They hydrate, patrol the empty desert, and only pee when told to. They throw hand grenades into empty spaces, navigate minefields that have no real mines, and train by shooting at nothing. At night, they still have to keep watch. This is all part of the training. But over time, soldiers start to get bored. So, to entertain themselves, they start arranging scorpion fights for money. Swafford also says the main rules of avoiding boredom and loneliness, which are masturbation and rereading of letters from their girlfriends and wives. Sometime later, a wall of shame is installed in the camp, where the soldiers place photos of the women who were unable to wait for them. This makes Swafford start to worry about Christina, his girlfriend. He checks the wall every day to see if Christina is there. One day, journalists come to their camp and Sykes gives instructions on what to say and what not to say. After Sykes's complaint, the soldiers are interviewed individually by journalists and lie, saying that everything is fine in the desert. When asked who is waiting for him at home, Swafford mentions his girlfriend, Christina. Furthermore, Swafford runs away from the sergeant's orders and says he is terrified of Iraqi bombs. The reporters then ask what protective equipment they have, and Sykes is quick to show the Sykes NBC suits. He tells them the suits are so comfortable that the soldiers can play a football game while wearing it. The soldiers begin to play despite the infernal heat caused by the suit. However, a fight soon breaks out between two players, which angers the sergeant as it shows insubordination. Sykes orders water to be delivered to show that the men can stay hydrated even while wearing the suit, but the Marines rebel, taking off all their clothes and making gestures in front of the cameras. Sykes quickly leads the reporters away. That night, Sykes takes revenge for their pranks and orders the soldiers to work in the rain. When they finish assembling the pyramid with sandbags, the sergeant tells them to start again from scratch. That same night, the Marines get their dog tags. Swafford is upset when he sees that they made a mistake in one of their personal information. He also receives a letter from Christina, in which she tells him that she met a guy named Carl, who is the night manager at the hotel where she works. Swafford begins to think he may be being cheated on, and the other soldiers tease him by saying that Christina's photo will appear on the wall of shame soon. Kruger encourages Swafford to take 2 days off to rest and to call his girlfriend before jumping to conclusions. The next day, vacation starts, and they can make calls. Swafford calls Christina, and the conversation goes well until he interrupts her and asks if she knows Carl well. The woman gets angry and says Carl is just a friend. The call drops before they can continue their conversation. The call only served to upset Swafford even more, and he started having nightmares about his girlfriend. Upon seeing his colleague suffering, Troy invites him to watch a film that soldier Detzman's wife sent. However, the video shows the woman cheating on Detzman with their neighbor as revenge for the soldier's past infidelities. Detzman leaves the room, crying, and the other soldiers try to continue watching, but Troy stops them, telling everyone to mind their business. On day 122, and the number of soldiers sent to the desert increased greatly. Still, the situation with Christina is stuck in Swafford's head, which makes him think he's going crazy. So, that night, he buys a canister of alcohol to drink with the boys and celebrate Christmas Eve. Swafford asks O'Donnell to take his watch, promising to pay him for the favor. While the other soldiers are having a great time, O'Donnell accidentally starts a fire while making dinner. The fire gets out of control and spreads to the flare crate. The soldiers think that an attack has started and run out of the tent with their weapons. Outside, they see it was all O'Donnell's fault. Hey, if you're watching until now, it means you're enjoying the video, right? Then, hit the like button. And if you want more movies like this one, just comment part 2 down below. Let's continue G. The next day, a half-naked Swafford vomits in front of the platoon under the scorching sun. Sykes demotes him to private for leaving the watch and assigns him to dispose of waste from the outdoor toilets. In the following day, Swafford and O'Donnell work on assembling and disassembling rifles. Still mad at O'Donnell, Swafford says that he wants to know what it's like to kill a man. Then, he loads the rifle and aims it at O'Donnell's head. Cortez, who was also there, leaves the tent saying he saw nothing, covering for Swafford. Swafford yells at O'Donnell, making him recite the sniper code, then orders the man to shoot him, but then he realizes what he is doing and begins to cry. While on patrol in the desert, Troy reprimands Swafford for what happened between him and O'Donnell and makes him apologize. Swafford begins to apologize, but is interrupted by the sudden sound of gunshots. Looking at the horizon, the Marines see silhouettes, so they get into formation. Swafford greets people in Arabic and approaches them for negotiations, but everything seems to be tense. But after complaining that someone had shot one of their camels, the men leave. On their way back, the platoon discusses what happened, surprised that Swafford speaks Arabic. And it turns out that Fowler really killed the camels, and he's really proud of it. He did it just for fun, because he was bored. The other guys don't find that amusing and look at him with judgment. Because of Fowler's irresponsibility, they almost killed 9 civilians. Fowler does not care, and when he notices a civilian girl sitting in a passing-by car, he starts making erotic signals to her. Later, Sykes informs that Hussein has finally officially announced Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, so the 2nd Platoon are now doing Operation Desert Storm. Even aware that there will be casualties, the soldiers are excited about going to the real battle. Since the enemy uses toxic gas, the soldiers are given pills and injection syringes. They all have to sign a waiver because the pills aren't proven yet. Kruger is the only one who refuses to take the pills and to sign the waiver, but Sykes explains what happens after being poisoned by that gas and forces everyone to sign the waiver and take the pills. Still, Kruger spits it out when Sykes is not looking. Later, the soldiers start digging sleeping holes for themselves and see American fighters fly over them. Troy is annoyed and argues that what they're doing is pointless because while they're busy digging around, the war is moving a mile away from them thanks to the Air Force. Swafford wants to calm him down, but before he can talk to him, Sykes takes him aside and warns him that Troy will be kicked out of the Army once they return to the U.S. Turns out the guy lied about his criminal record on his application. Therefore, the sergeant orders Swafford to keep an eye on Troy. Swafford tells Troy that he could have told him about this secret, and Troy advises him to mind his own business. At night, the soldiers receive mail. Swafford gets back a t-shirt that he had left with his girlfriend, and with it, there's a note saying that she will always love him. He is upset by this, but he tries to pay attention to Troy because the guy needs the support the most. Soon after, all the soldiers in the tent begin to cheer him on. They grab Troy and brand him with the Navy sign. The next day, the second platoon comes under enemy artillery fire. While everyone is hiding in the shelter, Swafford remains standing, appearing to be enjoying the start of the battle. Sykes tells him to get the batteries for the signalmen, so he runs through the artillery fire, brings the batteries, but they turn out to be dead. The Iraqis seem to be retreating, and the Marines advance in their direction. In the distance, they see U.S. fighter jets returning after their mission. Fowler happily waves at them, but a few fighters mistake the infantry soldiers for the Iraqis and begin shooting their own troops. As a result, several soldiers get wounded. The platoon reaches the cluster of crashed and burnt cars destroyed by that very U.S. fighter jets. While walking among blasted vehicles and dead bodies, they realize that there are a lot of civilians among the dead. One of the soldiers finds the corpse of a little girl inside a bus. They are all shocked by the brutality of the war, so they arrange a halt. Swafford leaves his platoon, approaches the charred corpses, and realizes the true meaning of what is happening. He is so deeply shocked that he vomits at what he sees. The Iraqis set the oil wells on fire, causing an oil rain. Sykes gives an order to dig in their sleeping holes. Everyone is working, but then they look at Fowler, who's digging something in the distance. A few men approach him and see how this jerk is playing with a corpse. Angry at the scene, Troy and Swafford take the corpse away. Sykes tells Swafford that he'll make Fowler to clean toilets when they return to the U.S. Seeing that Swafford is depressed, he keeps talking and shares that his brother has a drywall business and offered Sykes a partnership. That way, Sykes could have a decent life and live happily with his wife and kids, but he loves his jog too much. The next morning, Sykes says that Colonel Kaczynski asked for the two best snipers and he recommended Troy and Swafford. The guys immediately perk up. Troy and Swafford are tasked with eliminating two high-ranking Iraqi officers in the nearby control tower. The colonel reminds them to ask for confirmation before firing and sends them both on the mission. Hiding in an abandoned building, Swafford and Troy have an excellent view of the control tower. They wait a long time for the targets to appear, but the two officers only turn up in the evening. They set the weapon, and Troy calls the headquarters to request permission to take the shot. Having received the go-ahead, he starts the countdown. However, when Swafford is ready to pull the trigger, Major Lincoln interrupts them, saying there will now be an airstrike. Troy begs the major, but the major refuses, and Troy breaks down. Swafford helps him calm down, and minutes later, they see the Air Force doing their job again. Later in the evening, Swafford and Troy discuss their plans to return to civilian life. Troy says he'll be a drug dealer. Then they check the time. They realize that something must have gone wrong, because the pickup didn't come for them. So they decide to go back to camp on foot. Suddenly, they hear a noise and prepare to fire, thinking it is the Iraqis. But after climbing a hill, they see that it is the U.S. military celebrating their victory around the bonfire. Everyone is happy because the war is over. But Swafford is frustrated that he has never fired his rifle. Troy says he could shoot right then, and Swafford agrees. He points the rifle up and fires once. Then, everyone follows his example and start to shoot as well. A few days later, troops are going back to the United States. At this moment, a Vietnam War veteran jumps into the platoon's bus and congratulates everyone on the victory, expressing his gratitude for the great job. The soldiers immediately become upset because they think they don't deserve the praise, since they didn't directly participate in the war. Swafford goes to see Christina, but Carl is the one who opens the door. He realizes that it is too late and that she has already moved on. Next, we get to see the civilian life of his friends. Jerk Fowler is having fun in a bar. Kruger is making a marketing presentation. Cortez is in the park with his wife and 3 kids. Escobar organizing products at the supermarket, and Syke is the only one back on the battlefield. A few days later, O'Donnell visits Swafford and says that he has sad news. Troy has passed away. The whole platoon attends his funeral. The movie ends with the phrase that no matter what a man does after serving in the Marine Corps, he will always remain a jarhead. Congratulations, G. Now you're familiar with a new story. Subscribe for more And if you'd like more movies like this one, just comment Part 2 below. See you in the next one. Click on this video, you'll probably enjoy it.